Hello, dear ones. Father Peter John coming to you from All Saints Orthodox Church in Bloomington, Indiana. Christ is risen. Indeed, he is risen. I haven't been making videos for a while. I've taken some rest after great Lent, Holy Week, and Pascha. But now I thought it was important to return because I wanted to talk about a very special saint we are going to be celebrating tomorrow, and that would be Saint Kevin of Ireland. Saint Kevin of Ireland. I just want to tell you a little bit about his life. You can certainly read more. He was a fantastic man, a phenomenal character, and there are so many beautiful stories about his life. But I want to focus just on one. It happened, well, St. Kevin, he wasn't, as a kid, he was not really well liked. He was, I don't know if I would say he was a bully. He was just kind of, he was a little, he was just kind of an attention hog. He was bigger than the other kids and could be a little bit intimidating, and he thought it was all in fun. But you know how that goes sometimes when someone thinks they're having all this fun with you and really nobody else is having fun. Well, Kevin was kind of like that. He wasn't really loved very much by the other kids in the village and stuff. And then eventually he went on to decide that he wanted to join a monastery. And so he went to the monastery. And again, the other brothers at the monastery weren't super crazy about him. He just kind of had one of those personalities that kind of grated on him a little bit. And so it came to the beginning of Great Lent, and there was a tradition in that monastery. Glendalough is the monastery. We've heard about it like with in the story of St. Mary of Egypt, where at the beginning of Great Lent, all of the monks would go out of the monastery and they would go and they would pray for 40 days in the wilderness. And so this is what happened. Young Kevin went out and he found a place where he could go and pray. And so he went out to say his prayers, and it was, of course, springtime. And a blackbird lighted on his hand. It landed on his hand as he was standing there with his hands raised in prayer. And it had twigs in its beak. And so it took off and it came back and brought more twigs. Well, as he's standing there trying to do his prayers, this blackbird ends up making a nest in his hand. And so Kevin now is just kind of, one can only imagine what is going through a person's mind when a bird has made a nest in their hand. Obviously, God has something to do with this, because this is not where birds make their nests. And so then the bird laid her eggs in this nest and sat. Well, you can see where this is going. Maybe you can't. St. Kevin decided he was going to stand there until these birds were old enough to hatch and to learn to fly, etc. So he stands there with his hands outstretched, and time goes by, and the mother bird would go. She'd fly off, and she'd come back, and she'd bring him something to eat, like a bug or like a worm or something. And so Kevin was able to eat like this, but it just wasn't the tastiest fare. Anyway, this is how Kevin made it through Lent then, was, eating these berries and bugs and things that the bird would bring him. Well, eventually these little birds hatched, and then eventually the mother taught them how to fly, and they flew away, at which point Kevin collapsed in complete and total utter exhaustion. Well, eventually he woke up and he made his way back to the monastery, and something happened in him. He had been changed. He had suffered so much standing there with his hands held upright. He had suffered so much for the sake of that mother bird and her little ones. He had suffered so much that something changed in his heart, and he became a very tender, patient, quiet man, very prayerful. And he became a wonder-working saint in the church, and ultimately the abbot there at Glendalough. And he was so well loved by all. Talk about a transformation. So brothers and sisters, if you know somebody who gets on your nerves a little bit, or maybe you're the one, maybe I'm the one who gets on someone's nerves, there's hope for us. God sends us circumstances like the blackbird that allow us to have opportunities to change, to grow, to become holy. So my hope and my prayer is that we will each embrace those opportunities when they come and grow in our love for God and for our neighbor. Christ is risen. Indeed, he is risen.